Gary Breen is with us. Gary, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Good morning, guys. I'm very well, thank you.
We've started there talking about Liverpool and how, you know, it's a terrible situation they find themselves in. How much are they going to celebrate winning this league title when they eventually do? And my heart bleeds for them as a Villa fan who's watching my team collapse at the moment. Is it going to be in any way diminished for the players, the fact that they win the league the way they're about to win the league over the next couple of weeks?
I don't think so. Bearing in mind what an achievement it is and how long it's been for the team, of course you'd want to celebrate. And if you think about the parades that Liverpool have when they've won that Champions League and stuff, and you feel that, I know Champions League is considered the premier or the biggest title in Europe, but it's a special relationship, the league title for Liverpool, and the fact that they've never won the Premier League is incredible. So it would have been unique. So to be robbed of that opportunity is just one of the things that has happened. It's a shame, but those players will take immense pride, and they should do, because they've been fantastic.
Can we get your impression of the football over the course of the weekend? And maybe we should start with the Merseyside derby. Maybe the best part about this from an Irish perspective is Seamus Coleman and the quality of football that he put in after a long break. It was great to see, and it was great to see that he's still capable of that.
Absolutely. He looked invigorated, didn't he? And he was everything about his tenacious best, obviously, up against someone like Mane. It's a difficult challenge. But no surprise, really, when I don't know him personally, but in terms of his character, it shines through in every time he plays football, whether he plays particularly well or not. But it was an impressive performance by Everton, notably defensively, because I'd done their last game just before the lockdown away to Chelsea. And Ancelotti adopts his kind of 4-4-2 system that is quite fluid in terms that he can go to a back three in and out of possession. But in terms of their depth, how they manage the space in and around midfield between both the units, they did it so well against Liverpool. Against Chelsea, they were dreadful. Lost 4-0 on the day. Chelsea just picking holes between the lines consistently and exposing them. So you're worried about them. But obviously, we look at Ancelotti. This is a system that served him well. We've seen him do something similar at Napoli. Of course, he got a great result against Liverpool there. But I just think we saw his quality as a manager. We have seen now their players believing in him, because he obviously has that aura about him in terms of being an elite level manager. And I think it does bode well for Everton. I think there's a lot of work to be done, but nevertheless, that was an impressive performance.
The Ancelotti thing is actually interesting. I wonder if you're a new manager in a club and you have this weird period of time where you've not got very much to do, you don't have that much access to the players, but you do have access to all of their data and all of their most recent performances, that it's kind of a low pressure mid-season and next season's pre-season break as well. Are there some managers who are experienced enough to be able to use that to their advantage? Yeah,
well, you would hope so. In terms of what they have, the kind of different methods of coaching your players, not necessarily just being on the training ground, the fact that you're able to give them all the analysis on their laptops, iPads, whatever they're using, is a great help. It really is. And if I think about going back coaching now, if I had that tour and a manager was showing me it, because there's different ways you learn as a player, different ways you learn as a child. You might learn visually, verbally, whatever, being having to shown practically. So to be able to cover all those bases is brilliant. And I do believe that looking at them, because if you think about Liverpool, obviously their strength is the spacing behind. I didn't think they had that kind of threat so much without Salah. I think Minamino looks to come short, looks to link at 10. So they don't have that searing pace in behind. But nevertheless, Everton defended reasonably deep, trusted their midfield to come back and close that space. So you can see the work that's being done with Ancelotti. And I do believe you see the difference now in terms of his ability. I think certainly the supporters, we're not seeing them yet, will buy into Ancelotti. I think he'll have a lot of support in a way that maybe Benitez has when he went to Newcastle. Not necessarily bearing in mind that Brucey is probably has got a better points return, better win percentage than Benitez has. But the perception is so important in football. And if you suddenly got a manager like Benitez who's come from Real Madrid to Newcastle, or Ancelotti is just a serial winner with all the elite level clubs in Europe, then your fans are buying into it straight away.
What level of ambition should Everton have, do you think, Gary? I mean, obviously, you know, this season is going to be this season, but for next year?
Yeah. Well, I think the ambition is always there. And the big problem is how realistic it is, because if you think about the money that the new owner initially ploughed into the club, Marcel Brands comes over from PSV as director of football, does a great job there. So you're thinking, OK, listen, the structure's right, because so many times with that money, they just wasted so much of that money on buys that you just thought, really? You want to pay that much for that player? And it started to look a little for me like when QPR had a lot of money initially and were just throwing it about on players who weren't really worthy of it. So I think they have to be clever. And I know there's a lot of talk about getting a new stadium, so that will hit hard. And of course, when Liverpool are being so successful in your city, it is a difficult one. But I think with the likes of Ancelotti, I think they will encourage players to come there that they possibly wouldn't have done before. I think the Premier League's a massive ball anyway. And now Ancelotti's there, perhaps they are able to slowly but surely get players that they need to try and bridge that gap. But it won't be easy.
Gary, do you think the way in which Seamus Coleman was playing last night, and in fairness to Seamus Coleman, the break hasn't exactly affected his form because he was playing like that in the few weeks before the suspension in play, that this debate over his position in the Ireland team and the talk around Matt Doherty and everything, when you see him playing like that for Everton and playing as well as he has at any stage before his injury, that there's no real argument as to where Seamus Coleman stands now, that debate is done.
Well, Dave, to be honest, I wasn't surprised that he'd able. I never was one of those who felt that he was done as such. And I think we're very quick when players get to a certain age to think that, listen, they can't get it back. He certainly has benefited from the break and to recharge his batteries. But it was interesting because I talked about how good they were and how defensively set up and well organised they were. But having Seamus on the right-hand side, if you remember back to the games just before the lockdown, Sir Davies playing right back against Arsenal, got exposed by Aubameyang making those out-to-in runs and being caught out, costing him the game essentially, and likewise struggled against Chelsea. But Seamus gives you all that experience, that know-how. So it's great. We in an ideal world, I know the debate will always be there. It was noticeable to see him kind of narrowing up as a third centre-half quite a lot. I think there's a lot of talk about could you shoehorn both Doherty and Seamus into that type of system. I'm not sure Stephen Kenny will look to do that. But nevertheless, you just want all your players playing well, and whoever gets the shirt gets it deservedly.
So you're not sure Stephen Kenny will do that, but like it'd be good to see that, wouldn't it? I understand that the sequence of games probably isn't going to allow for a lot of experimentation from an Ireland perspective, but at some point down the line, these players, it'd be great to see them given an opportunity to play in the same team and somehow work out a way of both playing well together at the same time.
Yeah, listen, and I'm sure Stephen Kenny and his coaching staff will be so thorough. There's something I've noticed about them that they will look at every potential lineup, tactical shape to suit the team. But I've never been one, Joe, I've said this to you before, I've never been one about just shoehorning your best players in. If it is that simple, that black and white, that there's a right back slot available and it's between Seamus and Matt Doherty, then you just pick them. You don't suddenly start thinking, well, listen, can we play him left back and can we get him? It just doesn't work that way, in my opinion.
OK, fair enough. Let's move on to some of the other football over the course of the weekend. Some players seem to have adapted very well and come back very close to top form. A lot of other players are very rusty as well. Yeah. Is that just normal after a break like this? And we're going to be unaware of which players are in good form until maybe 2 or 3 weeks down the line where you're like, OK, now you're getting back to where you're supposed to be.
Well, I think we will certainly be there, but I think even the managers, Joe, have been, in terms of the selections, at times have been strange. They probably got their data through, who's looking sharp, who's impressed in training, because there's been a lot of team selections where you thought, really, he's not playing, that's a surprise. But I think, yeah, I think you're right. I think usually when you have the off-season break, invariably it's these elite level players now are probably only getting 3 or 4 weeks at most, considering that they'll have their responsibilities for the national team to play those games. So suddenly to have one as long as it has been is a unique experience. All the sports scientists will be having to work it out. But I think you're right. I think certain players have come back quicker. I've always made a point that centre-halves in particular take a bit longer, and not necessarily just for fitness, but I think about timing. I think John Egan, I said that in his first game back when it looked like Keenan Davis was giving him a bit of problems at centre-half, wasn't picking up the flight. Well, again, we seen it yesterday, although that's never a book in the first one. It's a nonsense that he gets sent off. So I think that can happen. Even talking about your team there, Joe, Villa, and that was the game that I really focused on watching live over the weekend. That was the main one for me, because I wanted to see what Chelsea were like. I thought they were in a driving seat for the Champions League positions. Could they take advantage of the fact that United and Tottenham had effectively dropped 2 points themselves and really make it count? And I was so impressed with them. There were a few signs that they had the same problems, that they were dominating games, but they couldn't make the breakthrough. And I think that's the reason why you're going to see the likes of Ziyech come in, Werner, who are guys who will come from out from in to get strikes on goal all the time. But if you add that to the quality that they have, I know the likes of Willian Pedro will leave in most likelihood. But nevertheless, Pulisic, Mount was so impressive. But for you, Jer, I think it'd be a frustration for you, because it's the second game for Villa. You'd expected them to have looked a bit stronger. But I just looked at them defensively, and it's a real concern. Yet they look like they have a good shape in terms of having that back four there, that narrow midfield five. But the space that they gave out wide to Chelsea was incredible. And it was noticeable to actually watch that, because I was looking at Conor Horan and I was thinking, the amount of times him as an advanced left side centre midfielder has to go back into left back and make sliding tackles. And I was looking at it thinking, what is happening here? You've got a narrow midfield, you've got a narrow back four, and yet Chelsea, time and time again, were getting in and spreading out. And I think it's a real concern, because Jack Grealish is obviously your best player, but out of possession, they are so vulnerable down that left-hand side. And so often, Connor's having to run back with sliding tackles. There's a couple of occasions in the first half, he gets in that left-back position, he's squared up by Mount. He doesn't want to be there. I think top-class centre-halves don't want to be in those areas against someone as tricky as Mason Mount, but he was there continuing. I think Villa having 2 home games and being lucky to have got that point, it doesn't look good for them. No,
I think they're screwed at this stage. Just to talk about Chelsea, because you said there you'd done the Everton game where they picked Everton apart with a similar sense of them being able to find pockets of space. They completely dominated the game against Villa and should have been. It should have been a much bigger victory for them. Are they a team who feel like they're poised for a breakout to be proper contenders again? And I'm not just talking about, finishing fourth and being a good Champions League team like, or Champions League qualifying team like the late era Wenger Arsenal, but actually someone who could go toe to toe with City and with Liverpool over the next couple of seasons.
Well, I do. In terms of them going forward, I think they're good signings. Ziyech, I've seen so much of him at Ajax. I know what he'll look to do on that right-hand side. He'll come in with his left foot and will get goals. No doubt about it. He'll get goals from distance. And at times, Chelsea have found deep line defence is difficult to break down. If you've got someone now who's got that range, gets in around the penalty area and gets sight of goal, he'll punish him. Werner, we know about his pace getting in behind. Whether or not the opposition give him that and whether or not he can play in tight areas remains to be seen. But they're good additions, they really are. But the problem remains, and this is the one thing that I would say in terms of that question, Jer, can they compete at the top defensively? No. I don't believe they can, because when you think about those title-winning Chelsea teams, defensively so strong, centre-half so good, and I'm looking at those centre-halves yesterday, Christensen, who I like as a centre-half, young, quick, looks after the ball, but they don't have the presence. Rudiger will always have a mistake in him, in my opinion, but they certainly don't have the presence that Chelsea centre-backs have had in the past. And you may counter that, and I'm sure many people will, and say, well, listen, Antonio Conte won the Premier League with Cahill, Luiz, Azpilicueta as centre-half. Yeah, they did. But the reason they did is because out of possession, that back three very quickly became a back seven. They got N'Golo Conte screening midfield. You won't get at them. But that was good. And I think that bodes well in terms of protecting those centre-halves who I don't think are of elite level quality, was the fact that N'Golo Conte reverted back to the position we like to see him best in. And that's patrolling deep midfield and just allowing the likes of the other midfielders Mount and to play forward Pulisic. I just like to see N'Golo Conte there. But in answer to your question, defensively is the reason they won't be able to challenge Liverpool and City at the top.
In terms of the top four this season, go on, sorry, Dave.
Sorry, Jed. So do you think, Gary, they actually have the personnel, and it's just a question of how they're being coached, that Frank Lampard over the summer can get them in a position where if he puts the likes of Kovacic and Conte in front of that back four or that back three, that they will improve, or they actually need to go out and sign a couple of centre halves that have real presence and maybe have played at a Champions League level? Because we saw in the group stages of this season's Champions League, Chelsea were exposed routinely by pretty average sides such as Valencia, for example. Yeah,
well, listen, I don't feel, in terms of tactically, I think in terms of being as expansive as Frank Lampard will want his teams to be. I don't think personnel-wise they have good enough centre-halves. You're right. And if you think about Liverpool, obviously Van Dijk, but this, the biggest example of if you take an elite level centre half out of your team is Manchester City. Take Laporte out of there, and their title challenge just crumbled, didn't it? And we're talking about some of the best players in the Premier League, how good they are in and out of possession. But if you ain't got a centre half who's just in the right area consistently well, then you can't do it. And I look at that, and I know they're going to look at situations now where they're talking about potentially getting a left back in. Chilwell's been talked about, but he ain't going to solve that problem at centre half, because Chilwell's, if he plays to type like we saw yesterday with an incredible goal against Watford, he'll want to be in high advanced areas and creating width in that pitch, as a modern day fullback will be. And because of that, because of the way the modern day fullbacks play, that they are high advanced areas, there's a massive emphasis on your centre half to be able to cope with space, but able to just repel the danger and set up another attack. And I just don't trust any of those centre-halves, whether or not it's Christensen, Rudiger, Kurt Zouma. I don't trust any of them to do that.
They're 5 points clear of Manchester United at the moment, as things stand. They're on 51 points, and Man United are on 46. What did you make of United's performance on Friday night against Spurs and the situation that they find themselves in, where it looks like they're getting to a point where they have a plan, they just haven't picked their best central midfield together yet? Obviously Pogba's coming back from injury, so where are they? What's the truth about Manchester United at the moment?
Well, listen, that's the thing, Jer. What is the truth? What is their best central midfield pairing or three players in there? Because on paper, yes, it's Pogba, go in there, of course, and we saw the difference he made when he came out on that second half, and the link-up play. I think Bruno Fernandes looks like a brilliant signing. I have not seen him live yet, but I was so impressed with him. He can take the ball in tight situations. He's able to get his head up, work it, to get his strike on goal, can play lovely passes in and around, and gives them real composure in that midfield area. So then you think, okay, we'll add Pogba and his skill set in there as well. And you're thinking, you're talking about two quality midfielders. But the big question, and it always will be this question, is not about his ability, Pogba, because I don't think anyone can question that. It's his consistency. It's his actual application as such. And I'm not saying that he's not got his mind right. It's just that when you think about playing centre midfield for Manchester United, it's not necessarily about what skills you have. It's how you influence the game. Now, whether or not you're a Roy Keane and you control it, or a Paul Scholes and you control it, that's what it's about, how often you play and dominate games. Not necessarily about are you able to flick balls over your head and control it, and that brilliant pass that we saw, that kind of side foot slice pass out to the wing that he done in the second half, Paul. But we know about his skill set, but it's whether or not he can consistently do that, and whether or not the failings in his game, i.e. staying with runners, looking after the opposition defensively, whether or not they will be exposed. But I can understand, I know this is going to be a big swell now for people saying, listen, when Pogba comes back, he's going to be sharp with Fernandes, and then McTominay, Fred, whoever is at the base. It does look like they've got some real quality, and it does. It does on paper, but it remains to be seen whether or not it has the consistency to show that quality.
Do you think, Gary, that the presence of Bruno Fernandes, I'm asking you to jump inside the mind of Paul Pogba now, which I know is no easy feat, but that when he sees someone like him in the team with him, that it emboldens him and gives him a little more sense that he wants to be part of this, because he can see a real attacking picture in the team, whereas before an awful lot of the attacking responsibility probably he felt was on his shoulders? Or does he see someone that is taking the limelight from him? It looks to me like Bruno Fernandes is already the leader in this team, and that might be something that will impinge on the mindset of Paul Pogba.
Yeah, well, my hope would be, Dave, that his reaction will be like, okay, well, I'm going to try and stamp and show you how good I am, and to be the top man. Not in a selfish way, but just to say, listen, I'm going to really influence it. You're setting the standard consistently, and he has done, Bruno, in terms of since he's come in. He's been so impressive, and he has made a difference. You think about the impact he's probably having on Pogba, but look at the impact he's having on the rest of the team. The fact that they're giving him balls in tight situations, that they're trusting him, making runs. I mean, that little reverse pass into Martial in and around the box, that link play was so good. Eric Dyer gets back to make a sliding tackle to stop what looked a certain goal. But even moments like that as an opposition defender, midfielder, would worry you, because you're thinking, listen, I'm going to close him down, try and flood him as quick as I can. But he can see you coming. He can play reverse passes. He can play blind. He does look a very good footballer. But that would be my hope, Dave, in terms of Pogba, that his reaction is, oh, brilliant. Listen, this is great. We've got another good player in the building. This bodes well. Will it end up like that? We just don't know.
Obviously, Roy Keane made headlines for his...
Makes headlines every time he speaks.
Yeah.
He's a headline grabber. He's box office. He could tell us the weather and it would be the headline.
He was right, though, about De Gea, wasn't he? And Maguire?
Listen. In terms of the mistakes they've made, but I don't know, to be perfectly honest, I don't know if it's right to be saying, you're going to start swinging punches. Listen, people watching football now is inclusive. I just don't know. I don't know about that. But having said that, at times I think Roy's very clever. He knows how people buy into what he is like as a pundit as such. But I didn't think I was looking in his eyes there, and I could genuinely tell you now that was sheer anger. He was furious with those players. You could tell, because I think sometimes there's a little bit of a wry smile, a little bit of a giggle after these big comments that he makes. There was none of that there. He was seething, and you could see it as soon as Kelly went to him to ask the questions. You could just see he was bullying already, and Patrice was just laughing as such. But yeah, listen. You don't need Roy to come out with massive statements like that to tell us that De Gea has been poor. And the worry for United people, bearing in mind that he's been a saviour for 3 or 4 seasons, De Gea, is that this run of poor form is really dragging on now. I can't remember. It's probably over a season now, isn't it, where he's been making these type of mistakes. On Maguire, listen, if you look at Maguire, and I have seen him since he was a young player at Sheffield United, coaching against him with Peterborough, you always felt you can get at him in terms of that. But yet, every time he made that step up, initially he goes to Hull, then he goes to Leicester, and you can't get at him. And he goes to Manchester United, and you go to England as well. Internationally, you think you can get at him. But very, very rarely can you. But that was the moment that you do see the weakness, that because of his frame, he's not the quickest. He finds it very difficult to move his feet when he's caught square on. But the reason why he's got to the level is that he doesn't normally get himself into those situations. But he doesn't have the recovery pace of a Van Dijk. He doesn't have the recovery pace of most centre-halves who are quite mobile now. He's a throwback, isn't he, in terms of his physicality. But I still think he's been a brilliant signing for Manchester United. And those type of situations where he does look so cumbersome, so vulnerable, they are few and far between.
There's no chance of... Go on.
Sorry, Jerry. I've a couple of questions on what we were saying about David De Gea. Roy said that he was an overrated goalkeeper, and given that he has been arguably the best goalkeeper in the world at a point, maybe about 2 years ago, and people were talking about him as being the best goalkeeper in the Premier League, it seems like a little bit of a farcical argument, but no goalkeeper in the division has made more errors that have led to goals the last 12 months than David De Gea. And you do feel there is a bad mistake in him on an almost game-to-game basis. Yeah. He's still referred to as a world-class goalkeeper. So on that count, wasn't Roy right? He is very much an overrated player at the moment.
Oh, he's not living up to that billing that you've just given there in terms of, and he's certainly not living up to the form that we've seen in previous seasons where he was single-handedly keeping the opposition out. You think about the last time that he played against Tottenham, I think he made 11 saves in that massive win for Solskjaer against Pochettino, which looked at the time a defining moment in terms of getting the job. For that second half, I think he made 11 saves. It was a nonsense how good he was. But there's no doubt, and I think I think when you think about Manchester United players, certainly in the generation that I played against, where you never really talked about confidence with them because they were just steely characters. They just churn out the wins week in, week out. But I think he has been massively effective with confidence. This is a goalkeeper that's at times getting booed by his own national team whenever he's in goal. They're not taking to him, the Spanish fans, and then suddenly his form's not particularly good for United. And you add to that the fact that there's a young, really impressive goalkeeper on loan from Manchester United at Sheffield United, Henderson, that's putting pressure on him. I think previously there was no pressure coming from within the building, was there, in terms of the backups, because you never felt that, even though they're national team goalkeepers as well, you never felt they were really going to challenge it, partly because of the form that De Gea was in. But now that's all changed. I think there's a big decision to make, and certainly he's going to have to show a lot of character, De Gea, because this is not at the level you associate with him. But unfortunately, as you quite rightly said, Dave, this isn't like a poor month or poor couple of months. This is going on a lot longer than it should do for a goalkeeper of his stature.
If only that fax machine had worked that time that Real Madrid wanted to spend 100 million quid on him, Man United would be quids in and he would have gone, and who knows, maybe he would have maintained the level of performance that they wanted to pay, made them want to pay 100 million in the first place. Gary, great to have you back. Great to have football back. Did you enjoy the experience of watching with the fake crowd noise or with no crowd noise, or how did you watch it?
Yeah, no, I had to go with both to begin with. I was saying that to Owen over the weekend, and there's no contest. You have to listen to it with a contrived noise, because even then, when you're listening to it, I know some of the fans' reaction doesn't kind of normally sit in with what has happened, but it just feels more like a game. I know it's not panning to the stadium, seeing the empty stands, but rarely do you look at the stadium anyway when you're watching on telly. You're focusing on the players, but I'd much prefer it with that fake noise rather than listening to them in a training ground session.
All right, good stuff, Gary. Great to have you with us. Thanks a million. Welcome back.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Take care.